Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and this is the flagship electric SUV from Mercedes-Benz. This is their EQS, of course, and today we're going to take a tour of all the coolest and most interesting features going on with this car, thanks to our friends at Mercedes-Benz of Milwaukee. Let's get into it. First thing we're going to talk about is the name. This is the EQS SUV, and yes, there's an EQS sedan, which might be initially confusing, but I think in the long run it'll actually make sense. You select your designation, EQ for electric, and then S for your S-Class or your range topping designation, and then you just say what body style you want, sedan, SUV, wagon, whatever it may be. It does make more sense, and of course they're riding on the same platform. They actually have the same wheelbase, the SUV and the sedan, but of course the SUV is taller, bigger, and more practical. The next thing to talk about is this may be the S designation, but it is not an electric GLS. This EQS is actually about 4 inches shorter than the GLS, so it has an optional third row, whereas the GLS comes with a third row as standard. So in that way, it's a little bit more like an electric GLE, but with all the luxury and tech that you can even imagine. And then we'll talk about the electric stuff. This is the EQS 580, which means it's at the top of the range, and it comes standard with dual motor all-wheel drive and bigger power. About 540 horsepower to be precise, and about 285 miles of range. It's built on a 400 volt architecture, so you can expect to charge 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes with a DC fast charger. Pretty good, not bad at all. And it's an EV, so you must have a frunk, right? Well, no, actually, you can't even open the hood. So where are you going to put your washer fluid? Well, that is where you have this little slot on the front fender here to put in your washer fluid. But the reason that you can't open the hood is because there's a huge air purifier under the hood, keeping things nice and clean and clear for you in the cabin, which has been especially nice, or would have been especially nice this summer with all the smoke from the Canadian wildfires. And then I want to talk about one of my absolute favorite things in Mercedes, and that's the ambient lighting. It is far and away the best in the business. You can select single colors from 64 different colors. You can select multi-colors. Think Malibu, excuse me, where is it? Where's my favorite? Malibu Sunset is my favorite, and it even waves and it changes through the cabin. It's the middle of the day, huge bright sunlight, and I can still see what the cool ambient light is doing. And not only that, it has different effects. So when I do things like adjust the temperature, you can see it pulsing red as I go hotter and blue as I go colder. It's just the coolest thing. And you can see this EQS is equipped with the hyper screen, so the whole dash is pretty much a screen. But if you go for the lower end screen, it's more like what you'd get in the S-Class. But either way, you're going to get this box right here, and this is a fingerprint reader. So you can set custom driver profiles and different settings to your individual fingerprint. And then I want to talk about the sliders on this car. I know I dinged some of the Volkswagens for having slider controls, but these actually work a bit better. You've got volume. Of course, you can click it on either side to make adjustments. You do have a volume control slider here, and your sunroof is slider operated as well. It works pretty cool. I do like this one. This one's my favorite. And then I want to talk exterior lighting. Now, it's not actually pulsing in real life. It's just the shutter speed of the camera. But you can see you have these 3 fangs. Again, 3 designates S-Class. Then you have a full width headlight. It's pretty cool. And then around back, you have kind of the same effect, except on the sides, it goes into that 90s drink cup design, which is just the coolest thing. I really, really like this taillight design here. And then I want to talk about these seat designs for a second. Not only are they really cool and interesting and made of really high-end leather and nice materials, but you've also got heating, you've got cooling. Again, I can select R to control the passenger side, not only their position, but also their heating and cooling. And then you get in, you've got things like massage, you have seat kinetics here, so the seat will work against you or keep your blood flowing on longer journeys. You can program workouts in here, and then you can set automatically your seating position based on your height. And this message is decidedly un-German. If you leave the door open, it gives you this message: vehicle ready to drive, shutdown occurs when locked after a few minutes. It doesn't say like 5 or 4 or 3 or 7. It's very slapdash for the Germans. But then we're going to throw it in reverse because you have the best 360 cameras you could possibly imagine. They are just super cool. Look at the resolution. The car isn't exactly the same color that I have, but It's quick, the definition is incredible, and it gives me this little force field so I can see when things are penetrating too close to my car. And also in your screen, you can select home, you can go to the EQ screen, and then you've got a whole bunch of information on your charge status, your consumption and efficiency, but this specifically, the range screen, it gives you different suggestions on how to improve your range. You can action each one individually, or you can select this button in the center to action them all at once and maximize your range. This is pretty cool, especially if you've got range anxiety and you need to get to a charger. This is nice. But now I'm over in the passenger side operating this part of the hyperscreen, and this is pretty cool. It gives the passenger a bunch of control over stuff with the car. I can see telemetry and info what the car's doing. I can select off-road statuses. I can select destinations for the navigation. I can keep an eye on chart. I can do all of these things from the passenger side. So if this person's got some anxiety about driving through a city or something, I can help them by setting navigation and waypoints and other stuff so that their life can be easier. This is pretty cool. Another unique characteristic is it's sensing that I'm not sitting here anymore. So it doesn't give me that option to use the passenger screen. But let's see if I push down. Now it's weight sensing, now I can turn on the passenger screen. And we've referenced it a number of times already, but let's just talk about the hyperscreen for a second, because it literally is the entire dash. It's all screen, and it is visually intoxicating. It is so cool. This is really, really interesting. Now, if you don't want the hyperscreen, you don't have to get it. You can get that simple kind of vertical portrait-oriented screen that we're used to seeing in the S-Class with all pretty much of the same features here, but hyperscreen is pretty cool. And since this is an EV, you can be sure that it's filled with all of these recycled materials. And this is cool. This is like a copper accent. Very, very nice. BMW is doing gold. Mercedes is doing this really, really nice copper. And a very interesting textured door upper. And same thing for the center console. Recycled vegan leather. I like it a lot. It's really cool. And then, of course, the last screen that we'll talk about, the digital gauge cluster, which, of course, is endlessly customizable with different themes and everything. If you want full map, if you want some off-road status indication. But if you go into eco mode on your dynamic select, you've got this eco ball, which is nice and green when you're driving as economically as possible, but turns red and angry with you if you're driving more aggressively. So it's kind of a fun game to play, but it's not the only game that you can play. You hit home, you go over into your sport display, and then you've got this UFO, which is actually a G meter. So it's actively tracking where your center of gravity is in the shape of a UFO. And of course, all these buttons are your Distronic or your driver assistance suite, which is probably top 3. It'll change lanes for you, and without it waiting for 30 minutes before it's going to do so. This actions what you want it to do very quickly and still safely. And then we're going to talk rear seats. Again, really nice materials. We have adjustments on the door. They're pressure sensitive, as they have been in the past few years. And you also have 3-level heated seats back here. And then I'll step in. I'm 6'1", and this driver's seat has actually gone backwards since I've gotten out of the car, so I actually have more legroom than this is suggesting. But I've got a nice flat floor, I've got vents, I could have my own climate zone back here. I do have chargers, unlike I did in the GLC, but I've got my own dedicated sunroof, additional ambient lighting, continued back here, and I've even got headrests for maximum comfort. And then we'll take a look in the trunk. Now the release for the trunk is right there, which is pretty cool. It's nice and hidden, keeps the design nice and clean. And then look at this, you have a massive and practical trunk back here. You've got grocery bag hangers for max practicality, and you have very nice aluminum trimmed switches to drop and raise each seat in the rear individually. You've got additional storage back here for netting, and you've got a 12 volt, which is probably one of the lowest tech things about this car. But huge practical trunk. This is another reason that I may not opt for the third row, because it would compromise the trunk for a third row that's maybe not as spacious as I would like. And then there's the sunroof or sunroofs, because the rear seats get their own individual sunroof, and this is a huge front sunroof that actually goes all the way back. This is something you really don't see at all these days. Pretty much everything has a full glass roof, but not much has a front piece that goes open this far. And now we're talking wheels. These are upgraded 21-inch wheels, and these are the only places that I can see that say AMG on them. And these are removable aero discs to keep the wheel area as aerodynamic as possible to maximize your range. You can remove them to have just the 5-spoke star design if you'd like that style better, but personally, I'm gonna leave these things on because they maximize range, and I kinda like the perforated effect that you get here. And then in terms of suspension, every EQS is gonna get air suspension as standard for the maximum floaty, supple luxury ride that you can achieve. And then there's the grille, or the grill. Now obviously this being an EV, it doesn't need a grill, but to give it a familiar face and consistent through the lineup, Mercedes has given it this giant black slab with a huge center logo. But if you look closely, you can see it's lined with all these small Mercedes stars. Kind of cheesy, but I fell for it. I kind of like it, to be honest. And it doesn't stop there. You also have it in your lower fascia etched into the plastic itself. And then we're going to talk door handles. You can see they're recessed into the car right now, but as I approach, they will open to greet me, and the car has unlocked itself. They've also been covered in chrome, because that is the Mercedes way, regardless of night package, and it says Mercedes-Benz. It's actually embossed and has texture to it. It's got a nice simple click, and you're in. And how could we not talk about the Burmester speaker covers? They're beautiful, and they sound beautiful, and you might have missed it, but there's one up here on your door. And the last thing we'll talk about is price. Now, Mercedes EQS SUVs start at about $105,000, but that is for the less powerful single motor rear wheel drive 450 plus. This is the 580 with dual motor, bigger power, and a whole bunch of luxury stuff. And as tested, it's only about $135,000. Now that's big money, but considering that it started at $105,000 and this is the biggest power and the most lux that you can get, it's actually not too bad in terms of options. So this comes pretty loaded, and it's really, really cool. So those are the 24 most interesting things of the Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV. I have to say, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty impressed with this thing, but if you want to see my full thoughts, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned, because we'll have our full review with the highlights and the lowlights coming to the channel soon. But thanks again to our friends at Mercedes-Benz of Milwaukee for letting us have a go in their EQS 580.